The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association is providing this podcast as a public service for informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host or guest of this podcast are their own and may not reflect those of the BSSA, employees of the BSSA, or any of its officials. Any reference to a specific product, entity, opinion, issue, or other such item does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation thereof by the BSSA. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association.
I love the Mark Twain quote that says the two most important days in a person's life are the day they're born and the day they figure out why. And the day I figured out why was the day law enforcement chose me to do this. And for me, it's morphed over the years, but it's always stayed the same. It's having a job that I do 8 hours a day that matters to people.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast, where we'll introduce sheriffs and deputies across Ohio. During this conversation, you'll get to know the men and women serving you and hear all about the good work being done in the Buckeye State every day. Now let's join your host, Paulding County Sheriff Jason Landers, and today's special guest.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff Chris Hilton from Sandusky County, Ohio. I'm Jason Landers. I'm the sheriff in Paulding County, and I'm the host of this podcast. Sheriff Hilton, welcome to Paulding County, Ohio.
Thanks for having me, Sheriff. I appreciate it, man. It's good to be here.
Heck yeah, you made it into our big dynamic studio that we have here in Paulding, and you're going to be episode number 21, but I would say less than 10 have been actually in the doors and got to see the flatlands of Northwest Ohio.
I feel like I'm walking into Hollywood here, Sheriff. What you talking about?
Yeah.
Flatlands. This is Hollywood. I like this.
I tell you what, and everyone can think what they want. I mean, it's a good small town operation right here, and we're real tickled with the host and the ownership of this radio station that allows us the technology that we get to do. And then we partner with the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association to pay for the production of this podcast. So I'm tickled that you're here, man. Let's just jump right into this thing. The
Sounds
vision of the onset of this thing was to connect sheriffs and deputies with the communities that they serve. And let's do that by getting started with you, Chris, just telling everyone, who is Chris Hilton? Talk about yourself a little bit. Where are you from?
Well, this is, this is one of those hard questions that we as sheriffs ask people when we hire them. Tell me about yourself. It should be easy, right? And it's like, you don't know where to start. So I was born in the city of Sandusky, which ironically, if you're not familiar with the geography in the state of Ohio, is not in Sandusky County. It's in Erie County, which is next to us. I was born in 1970, October 18th, 1970. I lived in most of my life in either Townsend Township, which is in Sandusky County, or Castelia, which is a little village. It's in the Margaretta School District. I graduated from Margaretta High School in 1989, and then I went to Bowling Green State University, where I graduated in 1994 with a bachelor's degree in secondary social studies education with minors in political science and history. All I ever wanted to be was a teacher. That's all I ever wanted to be. And I went to be a teacher, and I'll briefly touch on the teaching portion of my life. But the best story, probably one of the best stories I'll tell today is how I got into law enforcement. And I always like to say that law enforcement chose me. I didn't choose it. So a little bit more about myself. I have 3 sons and a daughter. I have 3 grandchildren that are ages 8, 3, and 1. They are the pride of Papa's heart. Being a grandparent is the greatest thing in the world. And if you haven't gotten to do it, Sheriff, yet, man, when it happens, it's a whole new world. It's fantastic. So I spent a lot of time with them. All my children graduated from Margaretta High School, just like I did. But I've been the sheriff now since 2016. I'm in my 3rd term. And I know you'll concur with when I say what we do for a living is the greatest job there is. Getting to serve your community, and be able to have that kind of positive influence and an effect on where you live and the people that you live with is amazing. Law enforcement is a great profession anyway, but being the sheriff by far and away is the best job in law enforcement. I know you agree with that.
Oh, yeah, man, absolutely. I'll tell you, let's go back just for a moment. I love when I ask a question, just hear the open-endedness of how people just kind of talk, as you can see, especially when you're in person. Sometimes I can feel it over the phone, but just, you're passionate about certain things just
Sure.
comes out when you start talking about stuff. Something I think is interesting with the geography of your area area is that Sandusky, Ohio, and the Sandusky County. And then a lot of times when, if I'm traveling around the state, specifically this year, or talking to different people, then it'll get into, talking about Upper Sandusky is actually below Sandusky, and it's in Wyandotte County. It's not even here. So, just the lay of the land. So you're right up there. I mean, you're a good golf driver swing away from Lake Erie up in that area where you're from. Talk a little bit. We're just going to bounce around here a little bit as we build into the 21st episode of this thing. I don't really want to follow the script that I had before, and we're just going to kind of bounce around. Talk to us about Fremont, just about Sandusky County, and what kind of towns or cities do you have? What's around Sandusky County?
So Sandusky County, we're about 60,000 people, which in the last, I want to say in the last census puts us smack dab in the middle of the 88 counties in Ohio in terms of population. Fremont is our county seat. Sandusky County is a mostly agricultural rural county. Fremont is about 20,000 people. We have two other cities inside of Sandusky County, Clyde, Ohio, which is famous for Whirlpool Corporation. So if you've bought a washer and dryer recently, more than likely it was built in Clyde, Ohio. As a matter of fact, we had President Trump, when he was running in 2020, came to my county and came to the Whirlpool Corporation in Clyde for a campaign stop, which was kind of cool. I mean, it's not every day you get to meet a president. Whatever your political affiliations are, meeting the president's a pretty cool thing.
Sure.
And then we have Bellevue, Ohio. But most of the cities and towns in Sandusky County, it's just a real great place to live. Low crime, very supportive of its law enforcement. A lot of school spirit. We have a lot of athletics schools, high schools that have some superior athletics. Clyde is very famous for its football. They've won a couple state titles. They just won one a couple years ago. It's just got it's hometown feel everywhere. You made a joke about small town county stuff. Well, myself and the county prosecutor went to high school at the same time together to the same high school. So it's like, small things are small and I like that feel. Even in the city of Fremont again, which is 20,000 people. It's not a small city, but it's not huge. It's still hometown, very hometown feel. Everybody kind of knows everybody. There's certain places where I'll walk in and all you hear is, "Hey, Sheriff, how you doing? Hey, Sheriff, what's going on?" And that's the greatest thing about our job is that, no matter where you go, you're the sheriff and people want to talk and you can engage with people, and you can do that anywhere in Sandusky County. And I'm very proud of where I live. I always tell people we have two claims of fame in Sandusky County. One is we are home of the very first presidential library. President Rutherford B. Hayes is from Fremont, Ohio. He's the 19th president of the United States. And we have an amazing setup at his presidential home and the library. And he went to the wrong school, but we're also the home of Charles Woodson, who a Heisman Trophy winner, who went to the University of Michigan. He could have went to Ohio State, but it is what it is. Charles did what he wanted to do.
We have to forgive and sometimes forget about things, right?
Yeah, but he was an amazing athlete. He went to Fremont Ross High School. So those are our two big claims of fame: presidential library, Heisman Trophy winner. Not everybody can say that kind of stuff. But again, Sandusky County, again, we talked about the geography with the city of Sandusky and Sandusky County, but we do have part of Sandusky Bay, which is part of Lake Erie. So I think one of the cool things is we're considered by the federal government to be a border state, because if the border of Canada runs right through Lake Erie, so we're a part of that, and I always kind of think that's kind of cool to say that you're a border state. But we have a pretty robust Marine patrol and that kind of stuff. So the county is just a good place to live.
Yeah, talk about the neighboring counties. Now, we talked about Erie County, which is where the city of Sandusky is.
Yes.
What other counties border Sandusky County?
So I share my northern border with Ottawa County, with Sheriff Dvorak. My western border is Wood County, Sheriff Vasilishin. My southern border is Seneca County, Sheriff Fred Stevens, and then Erie County, which is Sheriff Sigsworth. And then I have a tiny little part of Huron County in the city of Bellevue with Sheriff Corbin. So I have 5 counties that border me, and I will tell you, the 5 of them and myself have some pretty great relationships. We share a lot of resources. We share a lot of information. And to have that kind of relationship with the sheriffs around you, and I'm sure you probably do too, is invaluable when it comes to, just whether it's advice or equipment or people or whatever. I have a good relationship with all of them. It's a good place.
It's so important in what we do. That's for sure. When you talk about sharing resources, I would take notes here as we talk. Just still, when I think of Bellevue, now something over that way, and I'm trying to think if it was Seneca County or if it's Sandusky County. Their train tracks are a major part of. Is it Bellevue? Is that the location?
Bellevue is a major train hub. And they have a little train locomotive museum in Bellevue. So I share half of Sandusky County, or half of Bellevue is in Sandusky County. Most of the other half is in Huron County. And then there's little bits of Erie and Seneca. Most of the train stuff is in Huron County, the actual train depot stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty famous, train hub, if you will. And we have a lot of, complaints from residents about trains being stopped at intersections. There's nothing you can do about
man,
it.
What a headache! Isn't
I'm sure you get
it?
that out here too.
Yeah, I'm telling you, jeez, Louise.
Yeah, it happens a lot, and we try to tell people, we try to put them at ease, but there really isn't a whole lot we can do. It is what it is. If you live by trains, that's what you get.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's talk a little bit more, Chris, about your law enforcement experience. So take us back to the day you chose. Now, you used something interesting, I thought. We'd say, I'm bouncing around here a little bit. I just said something to my wife about how, people choose to get into law enforcement. And there's an argument. Is it a calling? Like, are you called into it? And what is that event that opens someone's eyes to go, man, I want to be one of those people. I want to be in law enforcement. I think it's, a little bit different for everybody. They have their own style. Some are raised in a law enforcement family, and some, like me, I was not the kid that played cops and robbers. I was not the guy who just grew up saying, I want to be a police officer, something terrible. I mean, I have my own story, but you said law enforcement found you. Talk to us a little bit about how you got into the field.
It's a story I've told multiple times in different arenas for different reasons. As I stated earlier, I graduated from Bowling Green State University with a degree in education. And again, as a child, all I ever wanted to do was teach and coach. That's all I ever want to do. I'm very much into the coaching stuff. I still do that. But wanted to be a teacher. Nobody in my family's law enforcement. Never even gave it a second thought. So I got my first teaching job. I was a permanent sub at Jackson Junior High School, which is in the city of Sandusky's school system in Erie County. And I taught English, and then I taught government at the high school level the following year. So go back to that first year of teaching 8th grade English. I taught the whole year, and I had a teacher come to me and say, "Hey, Hilton, what are you going to do for a summer job?" Now, as anybody that talks about teachers, they have that whole 3 months off, and I was a brand new teacher, and I wasn't making anything as what they call a permanent sub. So I'm like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. He's like, why don't you come, this is a teacher at Sandusky High School, why don't you come work at Cedar Point's police department? Now, obviously everywhere here in Northwest Ohio knows where Cedar Point is in the city of Sandusky, and it's a huge amusement park. And back in the mid 90s, they had their own fully functional law enforcement police department. They had 15 full-time officers, and then they would hire seasonals, whether you were certified as a police officer, and then they would hire what they called non-bonded officers, who just basically security guards, right? But you all wore the same uniform. I said, well, that sounds kind of cool. I'll do that, whatever. So I'm 23 years old. I'm a teacher. That's my mindset, right? They give me a uniform, they give me a radio and a set of handcuffs and a whole week's worth of training, right? And
nice.
and I'll never forget my FTO, who to this day I still talk to. He's a great man. He's retired from there now, but he goes, all right, Hilton, your job today. I was working afternoon shift after my week's worth of training. He said, your job today is you're going to work the Raptor Q line. Now I was there to make sure there was no line jumping going on or anything crazy like that, right? So I'm not there, Jason. I'm not there more than an hour, and I start smelling marijuana. Now that's back when marijuana was really illegal, right? And I'm smelling it, and the queue line's packed. It was a Saturday. The park was packed. Beautiful day. And I finally narrow it down to these two kids. I see them, right? They look pretty young, and I'm watching them. And right before they're getting ready to go up into the ride, I'm like, hey, fellas, I need you to step out of line. So, me being the brand new, week's worth of training cop that I was, or security guard, I pull up my radio, and I call for a real officer to come over because, I know marijuana is illegal, and the real cop's going to come over and take care of this, right? So I pull them out of line and say, hey, fellas, you can't be doing this stuff. I'm going to need you to, give me the thing. I got another officer coming over, and they start running. They take off. What do you normally do when somebody runs from you, right? you start chasing them. So I'm chasing these guys. I'm on the radio screaming. I form tackle one of them right in the midway. I mean, I rolled him, had him by the legs. I mean, it was a beautiful tackle. They catch the other kid at the front gate. These two guys had backpacks that were full of 3 different kinds of drugs. They had cash, and they had marijuana and cocaine packaged to sell in the park. And I remember that night, I'm typing my report. My uniform's all messed up. My elbows all scuffed up from tackling somebody in the concrete. And I'm sitting next to a guy who just retired from Bellevue Police Department. His name's Steve Nunez. And I looked at him. Now, this is day one of being on my own, right? I looked at him and said, can you believe they give us a friggin' paycheck to do this? This is awesome, man. And I'm telling you, Jason, I was hooked. I'm like, I want to do this. I want to do this. From that point, everything was about becoming a police officer. I went back to teaching. I went to the Sandusky Police Academy at night after I taught. Did that for 6 months. Got certified. I took 2 police tests when I graduated from Police Academy. One was with Fremont Police Department. One was with the Perkins Township Police Department, which is in Sandusky. And if you've ever been to Cedar Point, you've gone through Perkins Township. It's changed a lot in the last 30 years. But Perkins, I passed both. Perkins offered me a job. I started there in August of 1996 full-time, and it's been a wild ride ever since. But I tell people that day changed my entire thought process that I'd had my entire life. One day, one incident turned me into what I am now. And obviously I've evolved as an officer. It's not all foot chases and drugs and all this stuff. And we know that,
Yep.
But that's the fun stuff. And I say fun stuff. It's the stuff that young cops, they want to make the big arrest. They want to do that kind of stuff. Older guys like us, we understand that that's just part of the gig and you got to do all this other stuff too. But I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And when I got that job at Perkins, man, like I said, the rest is history. The township was phenomenal to me. We talk about my career. I'm in year 30 now. I can't believe I'm that old. I can't believe I'm that old. But I spent 21 years at that township police department, rose to the rank of lieutenant. It provided me a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different things in this career. But the thing that it did the most was prepare me for becoming sheriff, or at least I thought so. I thought it prepared me. I've been all to the training. I'm sure you've been to, Pelk, went to Pelk. And I had the opportunity in 2012 to go to the FBI Academy, which was amazing. That's a whole nother story. We could talk about that. It was incredible. The people you meet, the training you get, phenomenal. And I thought, I got this. I can do the sheriff thing. And then there's a whole nother story about why I even ran for sheriff to begin with. And I don't know how in depth we're going to do about that, but I think that's also an incredible story because, again, I had a pretty cushy gig at Perkins Township. I'd, again, been there 21 years. I was a lieutenant. I was working, Monday through Friday. I had weekends off. You know how hard that is to get in our profession, right? And I was making good money, and I was kind of coasting. I don't say coasting because I was still pretty active, but coasting to retirement. Retirement was you could see it. It was on the horizon. And then, obviously, I had lived in Sandusky County the vast majority of my life. And I remember the sheriff at the time, there was some, and I'm not going to rehash all of that, but there was some grumblings of him doing some pretty illegal things and some pretty horrible things. And at the same time, there was a pretty gruesome homicide that we had in the city of Clyde that happened in 2015 with a young lady named Heather Bogle. And all of this stuff with the sheriff and this homicide all kind of happening at the same time. The reason I bring up the homicide is because it went unsolved for quite a while. And then the dysfunction inside the sheriff's office, because it was a sheriff's office call jurisdictionally. And I won't get into all that, but the sheriff's office took the call, took the investigation and basically bungled it from the beginning. And it had a lot to do with what was going on at the leadership position with the sheriff and then with a detective captain. And with all of that being said, I remember in 2015, shortly after Heather's homicide, it had been about 10 months. I told my wife at the time, I said, I'm going to run for sheriff. And she's like, what? Why? and I gave her the most honest answer I could. I said, if we call 911, that's what's coming. And are you okay with that? And I will tell you, as a law enforcement professional at the time, I wasn't okay with it. And that was not an indictment on the individual deputies there. That was an indictment on that sheriff's office and the way it was being run as a whole. And she's like, oh, okay. And I got after it. I ran as an independent. The sheriff that got in trouble, it got indicted, 48 counts, 43 felonies, 5 misdemeanors, still ran, stayed in the race, actually won the Republican primary, which is why I ran as an independent. And I ran on 2 things. One, it was going to bring some integrity back to that office, but I also ran on, I'll solve that Heather Bogle homicide, because at that time it had turned cold.
Well, let's talk a little bit if you want. Now, is that case done and over with?
Yes.
I know there's a story to that. Let's focus a little bit less maybe on the prior administration. You win that election.
Yes.
You win your first term. And then let's just talk about Heather's case a little bit if you can.
Sure,
I mean, if it's appropriate and it's through appeals and all these types of things, because I know there's some really good work that was done on the back end of that thing. Talk about Heather's case a little bit if you want to.
So when I took over, my first day in office was January 2nd, 2017. And my phone rang within the first hour, and it was some TV reporters from Toledo. Hey, we heard you promised to solve the Heather Bogle homicide. What are you doing? I'd been sheriff for an hour. And so I set up a couple of meetings, and then I set up a meeting at BCI, and the case had been turned over to BCI. I wanted the case back. I wanted it back. I wanted to keep BCI in it, but I wanted the sheriff's office to take it back. So I had a meeting with them 5 days after that, like January 6th, 7th. Officially, I requested the case back. They gave me everything, but they also gave me an investigator, Chris Hamburg, who worked for BCI, who's now down at Mercer County. Chris was an amazing investigator. And so he basically set up shop in my office, and we started that case as if it had just happened. We were going to start from the beginning. And the previous investigation had cultivated 3 persons of interest who we determined pretty quickly had absolutely nothing to do with this crime. And it turned into a real whodunit. So we started pouring through the old investigation, pulling stuff out, and we just started it like from the beginning. And it was Cop 101. It was going to find every witness that had been named, re-interviewing people, doing all of the things that should have been done initially that I don't think were. And again, it's not about that. It's about what we did. But I will tell you that I was always looking for the aha moment. That's what I kept telling. Every time somebody would interview me, hey, where are you at with the case? I'm like, it's going, and it was going very well. We had a plan. We knew exactly what we were going to do, how we were going to attack it. But I guess we haven't hit that aha moment. And you've been a part of those investigations where you get that one little piece of thing that goes, yes, and it just clicks. You're like, that's going to help us. That's going to be the moment where this whole thing turns. And essentially what had happened is nobody had ever done any subpoenas for all of her electronic information. Now, her phone was never recovered, but I'm talking like her social media. She had Facebook and she had some other things, and her email accounts, her Google account, all that stuff. There had never been any subpoenas for all that information. So and to me, that's basic. That's basic stuff, right? And now it is. I mean,
sure
maybe,
is today.
Yeah. Maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't as basic. We know that to be, that's one of the first things you do now, right? So we did all of that. And again, we're out knocking on doors. We're interviewing people. We had cultivated some other people that we were looking at. But we were able to eliminate anybody that we thought was of interest pretty quickly. And that was all the people in Heather's life. So she had a tumultuous relationship that had just ended days before she went missing and was found dead. She'd had a very tumultuous relationship with a brother that lived up in Michigan. There was a lot of nasty text messages and information sent back and forth. And we looked into those 2 people, and we were able to say that they were not a part of this. Now, the critical piece of evidence that we did have was a piece of DNA, which was under one of her ring finger, on her, I believe it was her left hand, that they were able to get at autopsy. And there had been several, I want to say 50, 60, 70 at the time, DNA match comparisons, because it was male DNA. And they had not gotten any matches. So we had that piece of information. We obviously found the person that belongs to. That's going to be our person. Fast forward, we get all the information back from all the social media accounts and email and all that stuff. When we got that information back, I remember there was an analyst, Lori Braunschweiger. She worked for BSSA.
She's awesome.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
She's the best. Absolute best.
No offense, Chris, because Chris Hamburg's going to listen to this. I'm sure probably it'll be on the lunchroom, probably down at the Mercer County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
Lori's pretty good stuff.
She, and you know what? Chris will begrudgingly, under his breath, say Lori's the best. Because she is. So anyway, Lori's the one that's processing all this, right? And she literally is like, hey, look at this. And she shows us a picture of a trailer park from Skyview, Google Maps. And she's showing us these pings for Heather's Google account and the driveway of this trailer. And we're like, can you explain that to us? And again, this is, almost 10 years ago. So this was not as common as it is now. And then basically what she said is your Google account, if you have an active Google account on your phone will communicate with a Google satellite directly every 10 minutes. And it'll map that out within feet. None of us knew that. So she shows this to us. What happened was, because Heather's phone was turned off or smashed or gotten rid of, the Google thing keeps 3 weeks worth of pings, and then it overwrites every 3 weeks. So the 3 previous weeks up to the point where her phone was shut off were saved. It could never overwrite because her Google account was shut down. So 2+ years later, we got all of that information, found her phone, her Google account pinging in this driveway for 3 hours. Now, she left work at 6 a.m. This thing was pinging until about 9:30 in the morning, and then it was done. We're like, who lives there? We need to find out who lived, because nobody knew where she went when she left work that morning. She worked at the Whirlpool Corporation. She'd left at 6 a.m., vanished. Well, now we know where she was at, or at least her phone. Mm-hmm. So who's that guy? So we figure out this guy's name's Daniel Myers, who works midnights at Whirlpool, who had a thing for Heather. And long story short, we went to go interview him. Chris Hamburg does an amazing job in this interview, by the way. He went out with my chief deputy now, Nick Katsopoulos, and Chris did a great job talking to him. And they eventually asked him for DNA, and he was the first person to ever say no. Now, people say no, they get real weird. Oh, you're putting it in a bank somewhere so you can, whatever. That raised, but he distanced himself from her tremendously. Like, wouldn't recall her by name. The weird things that make the hair on your arm stand up, right? We eventually get a search warrant for it, his trailer. He had another trailer, his DNA. We took it, sent it, got it tested within days. I remember my major walks into the office and he just looks at me and says, "Hey, Sheriff, I got to tell you something." He's got this look on his face like he's sad or upset. He goes, "That DNA belongs to Danny Myers." We had him. 5 months, Jason. We had him in 5 months. And the crazy thing about that, there was an email sent to the original investigator days after the homicide that said, "Hey, I have a guy you should talk to. I think he might have done this." We actually followed up with that person after we found Danny Myers and asked her, and nobody knew we had him. We asked her, who were you going to tell the investigator? Daniel Myers. She knew. Never followed up on that email from the start. So long and short of it is, a 2.5-year investigation that went cold, we had done in less than 6 months. And we got a conviction. He actually never took it to trial. He's life without parole. And I will tell you, by solving that murder, I remember the mayor of the city of Fremont, his name's Danny Sanchez, good friend, calls me that day when we did our press release and all that other stuff. And he says, "Sheriff, with one arrest, you have restored people's faith in law enforcement in Sandusky County." And I'll tell you, that was one of the most emotional days I've had in my entire career, was to think that people were so distressed about how things were going in my county that by doing that, people now had faith in us again. And it's been about restoring that faith. And you know that. I mean, we're men of we're of the people, by and for the people as the sheriffs. And that's what makes our job so unique. And I'll tell you, that was one of the greatest things. Now, I've gotten to do some cool things for that. Heather's family got some closure. Wonderful people. They, going through something like that, as the sheriff or as an investigator, you want to try to take care of the family as best you can. We're excited because we solved a crime, but the back end of that is here's a here's a family that still is missing their daughter, their sister, their mom. And you got to go do that part. And they're just wonderful people. And we took care of them as best we could. But and again, I could do an entire 8-hour podcast on just that investigation because you got the Cliff Notes version. But it was a pretty proud moment for all of us. And like I said, with BCI and my office and other things, to get some resolution with that was phenomenal.
Yeah, man, I tell you talk about doing an episode. Our engineer here at the studio, talk about that over a couple other podcasts where stories like this come out and go, man, is there a market for just doing, podcast interviews on specific cases and the different type of techniques and things and luck and everything else that comes in? But let me just tell you, man, kudos to you and your staff for coming in and having that vision and for Heather's family to be able to bring some closure. That I was fortunate enough through that period of time. I've worked a lot with Lori and with Chris on some cases that we have here, whether they were current or cold cases, because we have some of those as well that we've continued to work on. And I remember the excitement from Lori's perspective and Chris talking about going through that case, man. Let's talk a little bit. 30 years is a long time to be in this profession. So you, like me, we know what we started with and we see where we're at today when it comes to technology. But is there anything that stands out to you about changes in our profession in that period of time?
Well, I will tell you, I think you'll probably agree. We have come a long way. Back in the mid '90s, when I started, I've told this story to a couple of groups that I've talked to, because I've had people ask me, what's different from law enforcement today is what it was when you started in 1995, 96. I said, well, I tell a specific story. Back when I started, I was trained by somebody that started in the late 70s. So you can imagine what their perspective of law enforcement was. It was thumping heads and taking people to jail, because that's what we did, right? And I always tell people, I said, it was kind of this unwritten thing, unspoken thing, that if you ran from the police, if you got caught, you were going to get your butt beat. The bad guys knew it. The cops knew it. That's just what was going to happen. And it didn't happen all the time, and it didn't happen every time, but it kind of did. And I say that, I tell people that because this was right after Rodney King. And I always use Rodney King and those LA riots as a pivotal point, because that was before cell phone video and all the other things, and body cameras and all the things we have. But that was the first time America really saw kind of what happened, and they were all aghast. But the problem is that stuff was happening everywhere all the time. And I explained that to people. I said it wasn't condoned behavior, but it was condoned behavior. And if you understand what I'm trying to say, like, I worked for a police chief that's what he expected us to do. And so when I say we've evolved, we don't do that stuff anymore, and then we've had incidents that have happened since. And obviously, most notably in our recent history with the George Floyd thing, our profession's slow to change. And I always joke that, cops hate, there's two things cops hate. They hate change and they hate the way things are. And and that's pretty much everywhere. And we've slowly changed. And to me, it's the professionalization of what we do for a living. Back then, it was a job. Yeah, you had a retirement, you had all these things, but it was a job, and you were there to do a job. You were hired to do a job. And we've been slow to change and professionalize. That's the first big change. The second big change I see is the way we help our cops and our deputies when bad things happen. Now, I can remember the very first death scene I ever went to as a cop. I can remember everything about it. I remember it was just a natural causes. 82-year-old lady died on her couch. I'd never seen a dead body outside of a funeral home. No big deal. It wasn't a thing. I remember every single detail about that call. I remember the very first suicide I ever went to. It messed me up. It bothered me. And I remember my police chief at the time, and I can't use the expletives that he used, but it's what you get a paycheck for. Suck it up. We don't do that anymore. I mean, the cumulative effect of the things that our deputies do on a daily basis and the cops in this country do on a daily basis is rough. I saw a statistic not too long ago that said the average person deals with 2 or 3 traumatizing things in their lifetime the average 20-year cop, 800. What does that do to your mental health? It's okay to not be okay now. You know, there's still a stigma to it, and I think you know that, especially with guys that like us that have been around for a minute. But I'll tell you, you know, the after action things that we do when we have critical incidents, and the way we're trying to open up avenues for our deputies to be able to talk to people when they have traumatic events. I had a deputy tell me that she went to a suicide. It was someone shot themselves in the head, and she was noticeably disturbed by it. And I talked to her about it, and I asked her if she needed anything, and we did some stuff for her. But I said, Kaylin, I said, the scary part's when you don't react like you are right now. That's the scary part. Like when it becomes normal, something's changed, and we need to make sure that we're really taking care of our cops' minds and their hearts as well as their bodies. And I think that's been a real big change in our profession. Now, it's not everywhere, and it's not as good as it could be or should be, but we're getting there. And so that's the way we conduct business, and the professionalization and the way we try to mentally and emotionally take care of our deputies and our cops, I think has really changed. And I think we're taking some pretty good steps forward.
Yeah, it's a huge change, isn't it? I mean, we implemented this year, mandatory wellness checks, and kind of following the lead of another fellow sheriff in a program that they implemented. But you know, it's amazing when we affect change, and maybe we talked about this in just the last podcast, I think, with Sheriff Terry Grice, how, you know, we as a sheriff, you know, you don't do everything yourself. You might have an idea, and then you put it on staff that have the ability to accomplish a task or implement programs. And when we mandate our staff or tell them they're going to do something, there's almost always resistance. Sure. You know, unless that staff gets something rewarding out of it, right? There's almost always when I implemented this mandatory wellness check. Of course, we have some data from other sheriff's offices to be able to say it's okay, it doesn't hurt. There's all these good things that come out of it. This is one thing that I nearly had zero pushback from, and at the end of those mandatory checks, I still today. Now, I watch this podcast. I'm gonna jinx myself here, but really haven't heard anything at the end of it. So we just had our end of the process consultation, if you will, with the folks that were involved from an administrative perspective with the entity that was doing the checks and the funding agency and these things. And I told him, I think if I'm not hearing anything back, that means it's okay. And we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it, making it accessible to people when we have these different critical incidents. And we want them to know that it is okay, and that there is a lot of you know, it's an anonymous program, so you can call this number that we have within our organization, and you can just say, "Hey, I would. This is me. This is where I work, and I would like to have a check with this entity." And it's taken care of financially. It's taken care of, and it's off the record. And that's a huge change from when we started in this profession. I wouldn't have went to my predecessor. You know, you talked about your first death, which makes me do what? Think about the first time I deal with this, and you know, we had 35 millimeter cameras, you know, you rewind the tape through. I remember processing my first suicide scene, and the boss was just like, okay, you take care of this, and I'm going to go tell the family. And here I am sitting there with this person, and I literally walked through the whole entire property through that little dinky, maybe, what was it, a half-inch square glass that you look through. I held it up to my face, and I walked through the whole entire property snapping pictures thinking, what am I doing, man? I'm 21 years old, and here's this. Someone took their own life. And I mean, I don't laugh about it because it's funny. But you know what I'm talking about, man. And it's just one of those things that you just don't forget about them, right? And so I say at times we're wired different. My son, my oldest son's just into law enforcement. He's in his first year in law enforcement, and you know, really about 10 minutes on the clock, he was dispatched to his first fatal crash, and it literally day one, 10 minutes in. And when I talked with him about that, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, gosh, maybe sooner, I would have just been like, you know, man, how'd that happen? I'm sorry about his luck. But my first question to him, and maybe it's because he's my son, I'm like, are you all right? I mean, are you okay dealing with that? Because I said, listen, son, that's not for everybody, and there's no turning back. You're not going to forget about that.
Nope.
You know, and so.
Well, I would say, Jason, that he has the luxury of having you, and he can come and talk to you if he wants. My oldest son actually just got hired by the city of Fremont's police department, and he's going through the police academy right now. They're putting him through. So I'm very proud of him. I think he's going to be a phenomenal police officer. But nobody told me what to expect back in the day. Like, you're hired. This is what you got hired for. You're going to see all this crap, and it's going to suck, and you're going to have to just deal with it. And you figure it out eventually. At least most of us do. But you talk about asking if your son is okay. Nobody ever asked me if I was okay at any of the things that I went to in the first 5 years of my career that were awful.
Right.
The suicides, the crashes, the murder scene, any of those things where you're like, and I always just tell people, it's like, I almost look at it like it was a movie sometimes, like it wasn't real. You know what I mean? You just can't, because it's hard to process. And so I compliment you for making your wellness mandatory. We just went to a program through Lexipol called Cortico, and we have some local, counselors and psychologists that are a part of that program for us, so that and it's a lot of the younger deputies that want to do things on their phones, and it's easier, and the anonymity of doing that. It's been wildly successful, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we're doing that, and we've never had anything like that. Now I'm going to try to do some different things. I'd like to make it mandatory. I haven't done it yet, but I probably will. And we'll probably talk maybe after this about that, because that's something I've really been focusing on lately, is to try to help, because I want to keep people, and I want to keep them as emotionally happy and healthy as I can, even though they signed up to do all the things that they're going to have to do. But I see that as probably the biggest positive change.
Yeah, it's a great change, man. Chris, let me ask you this question before we take our ad break. What drives you, man? What's your passion to do this job? And I can sense and I can see, because I'm in the studio with you, your passion and the things that you have. When you talk about just your career, right, your family, your grandkids, all these different things, I think you're an emotional person, and that's awesome. What drives you to do this job every day?
Wow. It's changed over time. And I think you'll probably agree with that. You always ask yourself, what's your why? I love the quote, the Mark Twain quote that says the two most important days in a person's life are the day they're born and the day they figure out why. And the day I figured out why was the day the day law enforcement chose me to do this. And I would always tell you that, it was fun when you did it, when you were a young cop, right? And I say fun, and you know what I mean by that. I don't mean like it's all serious business, but it was fun. And then after a while, when all the glitz and the glamour and the fast cars and the uniform and all that stuff wears off, you're left with the job. Why do you still come to work every day? It's not for the paycheck, because if it is, you're in the wrong profession.
Amen to that.
You're in the wrong profession, and you're probably not going to last anyway. It has to be something internal. And for me, it's morphed over the years, but it's always stayed the same. It's having a job that I do 8 hours a day that matters. That what I do matters to people, and it can be in a positive way. It could be, in a negative way, in a sense that, when you go to arrest somebody or you do something, you're doing something that matters. You're holding people accountable, but it always matters. And that meant something to me. Like, I felt like I was having an effect on my community. And I will tell you, as the sheriff, that has been amplified. We, as elected officials of our communities, have such an amazing potential to affect change and to positively influence all of the things that go on in and around our community. People look to us. They look to us for answers to questions that, frankly, aren't really even our jobs. And I know you know exactly what I mean, but, they look at us, you're the sheriff, and it's like, you almost have to remind yourself, I am the sheriff. Like, this is awesome. I get to do this every day. But to me, it's that effect, that positive effect you can have on your community, and just doing something that matters, man. It matters what you do. And I've told all my children, obviously the oldest one's going into law enforcement. I've told them, I said, how you measure success and what you do is up to you. I said, I always wanted a job that mattered. Teaching is the same thing. And I'll give my heart out to all them teachers out there from K through 12, especially them kindergarten, first grade teachers. You guys are angels. You're there because you want to help and you want to do things for people. And, some people just want to make money, and that's great. They're all about themselves. This job, it can't be about you. It's never about you. Because the second this job becomes about you, it's time to go do something else.
Amen, brother. I'll tell you what, this association is funded by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association for this podcast. And we're going to go ahead and take a break. We're going to pay the bills here. We're going to continue on with Sheriff Chris Hilton from Sandusky County right after this.
This podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. The BSSA is in Columbus, Ohio, and was established in 1931. The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association was formed to perpetuate an efficient organization of Ohio sheriffs and their deputies. BSSA provides an exchange of information pertaining to the duties, methods, and official practice of its members. The association also exerts such influence as may be necessary to bring about and preserve legislation in harmony with the needs of enforcement officials and the safety of the public. The BSSA supports the efforts of this podcast to promote Ohio sheriffs and deputies and their mission to serve and protect the citizens of Ohio.
Welcome back to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're going to continue on with Sheriff Chris Hilton from Sandusky County. Fremont, Ohio is the county seat over that way. Sheriff, talk to us more particularly about your office. What's the size of your agency? Just talk about the sheriff's office a little bit.
Well, the sheriff's office, I have 82 employees. We are a full-service sheriff's office, meaning we have road patrol, civil division, jail division, communications division. We also have a fully functional special response team that's regionalized. Every agency in my county, police department, and the sheriff's office participates. We have a fully functional marine patrol. And we have a bike patrol and some other things. But we're a full-service office. I'll tell you, I have 4 school resource officers. We have all those types of things. And I'm very proud of where my office has grown over the last 8-9 years. And I'll tell you, when I took over as sheriff, I didn't know crap about a jail, right? I never worked in a sheriff's office. I was a cop. And I will tell you, every street cop will tell you the same story. I know what I know about a jail. Get into the Sally Port, get them out as fast as you can
right.
before they tell you to take them to the hospital, right?
Right.
That's what every cop knows about the jail, right?
Yeah.
And as I alluded to earlier, there were a lot of things in my office that I had to kind of take care of on that first term from 16 to 20. But when I got reelected in 2020, my focus went to the jail. And, that's our biggest headaches. As you know, it's my biggest worry. It's what causes me most of my sleepless nights. And corrections deputies are lost in the shuffle when it comes to our profession. That is a tough gig. And I wanted to focus on that jail. I wanted to figure out what I could do for the staff, maybe to create some less of the turnover, because I'm sure you've probably had some issues with that as well. And I wanted to know what we could do for the inmates. There wasn't anything going on back there. I mean, we had a few things. They had some, religious classes and some other little things going on, but there really wasn't much going on back there. And I remember being at the National Sheriff's Association conference in 2022, which was in Kansas City. And I'm standing in the vendor hall, and I had a young lady that works for NSA walks up to me. And, back then we had the lanyards that designated us as a sheriff. If I think it was yellow or whatever, they knew you were a sheriff. And she comes up to me and she says, "Sheriff, can you go listen to this thing over here in the hall? There's going to be a sheriff talking about this program he has in his jail." I'm like, "Sure, I'm not doing anything." So I walk over. There's probably 4 or 5 sheriffs. There's maybe 15 people there, and I see this guy up on the stage. His name's Chris Swanson, and he is the sheriff of Genesee County in Michigan, which is Flint. And this guy starts bouncing back and forth on the stage, and he's just as animated and histrionic, and he's talking about doing Ironmans, and he's talking about saving people's lives, and he's talking about this program he's running in his jail, and he's got to do all these, and he's just bouncing back and forth. 15 minutes of this, right? I'm exhausted by the time I get done watching. I mean, I'm tired watching him.
But dude, yeah, I mean, it makes you kind of sweat just watching him work the stage, right?
But you want to talk about passion, and you want to talk about fire, and this guy, every word that's coming out of his mouth, you can tell is to his core. And he gets done, and I'm like, yes, man, I am buying. I don't know what the heck this guy's selling, but I am buying it. So I went right back over to the young lady that had pushed me towards this thing. I said, "Hey, I don't mean to sound stupid." I said, "But what the hell was he talking about?" She goes, "Hang on a minute." She brings his jail administrator over. His name's Todd Lanning at the time. And for the next hour or so, I talked to Todd. I asked him what this Ignite program was about. And I said, "First of all, what does it even mean?" And he goes, "Well, it's an acronym. And IGNITE stands for Inmate Growth Naturally and Intentionally Through Education. Like, okay, tell me more. The sheriff came up with this program back in right when COVID had happened, and he wanted to do something different and blah, blah, blah. And he's going through this loss, and I still really didn't understand it. Like, it sounded all good to me. And then I just gave the sheriff, like what we normally do, 10 reasons why it wouldn't work in my jail. I don't have the staff. I don't have the money. I don't have the space. I go through all the things that we're probably all going to say. Oh, my building's old. I don't have the technology. And those were all things I told him. He goes, doesn't matter. He goes, you can do it with paper and pencil. I'm like, okay. So I talked to him some more. He's still explaining, and I still quite didn't have a grasp of what he was talking about. Like, it was education, but I didn't get it. Like, are they certifying people and stuff? What are they doing? So Todd and I continued to talk. I talked to Sheriff Swanson about it. And again, 10 more minutes with him. I had to go take a nap. The guy's a bundle of energy. And so I go home and I tell my command staff, I said, hey, a couple of you are going to Flint, Michigan. Who wants to go spend a couple nights in Flint? Right? Don't drink the water. Sorry, Sheriff. But long and short of it, I wanted to get them on board. Because if I'm going to implement anything, and you know this as a sheriff, we're idea guys. A lot of us are idea people. We have the big ideas. We find the people in our office to make those things happen and then get it done, and then we oversee it. It's kind of what we do. And that's where I was at. I'm like, that jail needed something. My jail needed something. So I sent my jail administrator and my chief deputy at the time up to Genesee County. I say, hey, fellas, go tell me what this program's all about. And they're like, do we have to go? I'm like, yeah, you have to go. Or are you going? No, I'm not going. I'm already in. I want you guys in. So they go up there. They go out the night before. I don't know what there is to do in Flint, but they go out the night before. They get up. They go to the sheriff's office the next day. And within being there for an hour, my jail administrator calls me on the phone. And he's like whispering. He's like, Sheriff, this thing is awesome. You got to see what they're doing here. This is amazing. And he's just going on and on and on. As he's talking to me, my chief deputy's calling me. I said, hey, man, I gotta go. I got another call. Now they're together. They're in the same room. Chief deputy calls me and says, Sheriff, this is amazing. You got to see what they're doing up here. This is crazy. They got blocks of 70 guys and they're on iPads and they're sitting here and there's like not a peep and it's crazy what they're doing. So I go up there and I go to one of their graduation ceremonies. Now I'm going to be honest with you. I still really didn't know what it was they were doing, but it was awesome. And so I go to this graduation ceremony and I had to endure meeting all of these former University of Michigan football players, but yeah, they were all cool. Go Bucks. Anyway.
Was it because they were in the jail? Is that why you had to see them? Or I just had to ask that question. I don't know.
For all you Michigan fans out there, that's funny stuff, Sheriff Landers. No. It was a couple of former players. Okay, all right.
Yeah, just wanted to be clear.
I got you. A couple of former players.
I will get a text message or two from a Michigan fan about that comment.
I'm sure you will. So at any rate, I leave this graduation ceremony, and what I took away from the entire thing was the looks on the faces of these inmates when they were getting these certificates. And I kept asking, what are they being certified in? And the sheriff told me, he's like, they're not being certified in anything. He goes, they're just accomplishing stuff. He goes, people look and dress like you and me are telling people in a jail, good job. Hey, thanks for completing what you did. And they're doing classes like Tai Chi and yoga, and they have VR headsets where they're doing carpentry and they're not being certified, but they're learning something. They're being occupied. And basically what IGNITE is at its very worst is inmate modification. It's behavior modification. You're giving them something to do. As you know, an idle mind and idle hands inside of a jail, usually bad things happen. At its absolute best, what you're doing is you're building people. Now, these are people who are broken. You know, when you're in and out of the criminal justice system, you get trapped sometimes. And then you believe a lot of the things that you're being told, or believe that society thinks you're less than, or you're not good enough, and this is all you're ever going to be as an inmate in and out of a jail or in and out of a prison. What Sheriff Swanson's program did was he provided all of these educational things to do. Not giving you diplomas, not giving you degrees, not certifying you anything, but he's giving them educational opportunities to build themselves. He's trying to build people. He's trying to repair their own self-image. And every little baby step that they took was success. And it would be day by day. they'd come in and there would be a class. Say it was one of the ones that he likes to do is financial literacy. You know, I have somebody from a bank on the outside in your community come in and teach for an hour to a group of 10 or 12 inmates about what a credit score is, how to write a check, how to open up a savings or checking account. Be amazed at how many people in these facilities have never done any of those things. And then they go to class for an hour. And after they're done with class, they get a little reward because they behaved. Sounds kind of silly, right? They behaved. Give them a couple pieces of candy. The next Tuesday, when that same person comes in and those same 10 guys go to that same class, maybe they get coffee, which, you know, coffee or soda in a jail is like gold, right? As a reward for behaving and doing what they're supposed to do. And then it's not even so much about the reward. It's about, I want to go to the next class. I want to do the next thing. I want to complete the next class. And they would get these little certificates that said, you went to financial literacy class. You completed 7 hours. Not certified in anything. But that certificate, when you watch these people being patted on the back and shaking the hand of the sheriff or a sheriff from another state, and you're saying, hey, man, great job on getting your certificates. It's gold to them. It's like they're different people. And then when you watch them interact with their family, because one of the rewards we do in my program is when we have a graduation ceremony, they get to have a family member come in. We don't do in-person visitation anymore. Most jails don't. They get to hug a family member. And if you've been in jail for 6 months, hugging a family member is a big deal. And to watch the emotion that people pour into this kind of stuff. So I'll break down what the program is for us. We run a lot of different classes. We do it about 5 or 6 weeks at a time. And I'm just going to give you a couple statistics from our program and some of the things that we did last year. Last year in 2024, we had 280 students in Ignite. Now, I probably need to back up, Sheriff, and let you know that any participation in the Ignite program is completely voluntary. It has to be voluntary. If you have children, and this is always the analogy I use, if you tell your kids to do something, you get a lot of moaning and groaning and grumbling. And you're not going to get probably the best. You tell them to go clean their room, you're probably going to have to tell them again. If you somehow can make it their idea and then reward them for doing it, they're going to do it a lot better and they're going to do more. That's basically what Ignite is. It's voluntary. We tell them we offer all of this. Do you want to participate? And if they participate, we give them the rules. Hey, you got to act up. You got to do this, this, and this. If you have any disciplinaries, you get removed from Ignite. And what happens is they don't want to be removed from it. So your disciplinary goes way down. And there's a lot of anecdotal things I'm going to tell you. But
before you read your numbers, Sheriff, tell the listeners you have a 80-some bed jail. So at any given time, you have about how many people in there, and then your statistics might really sound even more
So
impressive.
My average daily population is about 80 to 85. I have an 88-bed facility. At any one time, I have about 15 to 20 Ignite participants. They're doing whatever classes we're offering at the time.
And by percentage, that's
you're
amazing.
You're talking about 20%,
absolutely,
maybe 25%, which is incredible. So last year alone, we had 280 students participate, with about 1,800 hours of participation hours or classwork hours. Of those 280, we had 5 people return on new charges within 6 months, and less than 15 total, which would include parole violations and bond revocations. So what you're talking about is 280 students in a calendar year. We had less than 25 return within 6 months.
So that recidivism is going away. I mean, you're seeing that based off those numbers, not eliminated, but it's very effective.
It's incredible. And the fact that we're having that kind of impact is almost beyond what my wildest dreams were. I will tell you that anybody is curious, if they Google Ignite, there was a study done by some professors from Harvard and the University of Michigan about Ignite's impact and what it was doing, and they used Genesee County, which was where this started up in Michigan, as the focus of the study. And what they found is that 26.8 days of Ignite, and they're talking about how many, basically a month's worth of Ignite, reduced the recidivism in the Genesee County Jail by 27%. That's incredible. Now think about what your average daily stay is in a jail. It could be anywhere from 8 days. Mine was up to almost 26 at one point. That's almost a month.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be people who are going to be there for 6 months. If they're only going to be there for 2 weeks, you can still get them in Ignite stuff. You're still going to build them up. You're just trying to build people. That's all we're doing, is trying to build people, not fix them, build them.
Now, at the end of the program, break down if you're there 3 months, maybe you complete your program. If you're there 2 weeks, you can still do some Ignite program stuff, but are you going to get that certificate of completion, or is it just...
So it's funny you ask. So you will, if you're there for 2 weeks and you successfully complete any amount of hours of Ignite, you will get a certificate of completion. Doesn't matter if you only did 3 hours and you did it successfully, i.e. meaning you did what you were supposed to do in the class and you weren't disruptive and you got no discipline, any of that kind of stuff while you're in the jail, you will get a certificate. It's amazing. And they I'm telling you, Sheriff, they walk out with those things like it's gold. It's amazing the power of that positive reinforcement is. That's all it is. And again, it's people that look and dress like you and I in uniform, shaking their hand, patting them on the back and telling them, man, I'm proud of you. Like, that is powerful stuff. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, but when it does work, that's why you do it.
Yeah. So I'll just tell the listeners, I mean, I was fortunate enough. You invited me. Maybe it was your last graduation.
Yes,
I'm not sure if that was
yes.
your last one. You invited me to that and I was able to attend. And, you said a couple of things you said in the onset of talking about Ignite. You're going to see some emotion. You're going to see, you talked about just the pride that the inmate has. So I was able to sit and listen as you spoke, and then the mayor of Fremont was your keynote speaker, if you will.
Yes,
the people that were in there, along with some family that was there to see the inmates, and so I would share with you that I think you had 6 people that were completed the course. Yep. I think there might have been 3, maybe 4 people that had some family there they were talking to, but there was one young lady that was standing there, just kind of standing by herself. And so I walked over there just to shake her hand and tell her congratulations. And I said, are you looking forward to getting out of here and putting some of these tools to use? And she goes, oh, geez, I don't know. My trial doesn't even start until next week. I thought, oh, that's interesting. So from a sheriff's perspective, this is a pretrial inmate who chose to be in here, reached this achievement. She don't even know what her fate is and whatever her charge. I didn't ask. I just shook her hand and I said, congratulations to you. And I went around, I think I shook every person's hand, all the inmates' hand, and just said, congratulations, which is part of what you're talking about. Yes. Just seeing the person that dresses like me and you that's in there, So when I've come back here and talked with my jail staff or deputies, chief deputy, and my command staff meeting, talked with my commissioners, I've been laying the foundation for what I learned from you about Ignite. And I remember, talking or listening to Sheriff Swanson at the national events and these different types of things. I was telling you before we recorded, I think we hired the right person under a grant in the opioid remediation grant funding from our Attorney General's office that we can add some tasks to along with the job assignment that he's going to have, where monitoring this program could be one of those things. There's just I think there's a lot of goodness that can come from this. I see some sort of a correlation. I've talked with our common pleas judge about maybe a correlation between drug court and what our judge locally is doing with, I think there's some of the same people that end up in our drug court that could use the things that they could complete in this Ignite program. So, I'm looking forward to this. So tell me, if you will, for the sake of time, if you're a sheriff in Ohio, we'll just say specifically in Ohio, but hopefully, people listen to this thing across the country, we hope. But if you're a sheriff that has an interest in Ignite, I understand from you were the first in Ohio to do it. Now Washington County and Fayette County are going and talk to me about what do I do if I'm interested in implementing this program? So
this is a program that is sponsored by and kind of coordinated through the National Sheriff's Association. The program director at that level is a young lady named Megan Beal. If you contact the National Sheriff's Association, and you express interest in Ignite, whether it could just be email, it could be any kind of conversation, I could hook them up with Megan or a young lady named Claire McNally, who's also part of that program with NSA. They have a playbook. They'll tell you exactly how to start, where to go, what to do, because, cops, we like to have things put in front of us. We want to have concrete things we can hold and read and tell us what to do. And they've come up with that. So it's definitely something that the NSA has promoted. I think we're in 14 states now. Across the country where Ignite is in jails, and they're in jails my size. I'm the smallest one of every Ignite site, except for now Vern is down in Fayette, but we're roughly the same size. But this is operating jails of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 beds, and obviously that doesn't compute with you and I. We don't, but that's a large facility. So, but NSA is critical in getting this done. We kind of want it to be a framework and run through that, and then you kind of craft it to what your community needs, and that's basically what it is. But it runs through Megan Beal at the National Sheriff's Association, and she does a phenomenal job of setting everything up, the communication level, getting everything that a sheriff might need or a jail administrator might need to get the program rolling. And I just want to touch on, we also got that same grant that you referenced, hiring your navigator, and we're also doing the same thing, and she will be working under the umbrella of our Ignite program. So it's probably going to be very similar.
And then I assume, we have a very close-knit relationship in Ohio with our sheriffs through the Buckeye State Sheriff's Organization. But if any sheriff in Ohio has a question, they reach out to you. And
any sheriff in the state of Ohio or anywhere listening could reach out to the Sandusky County Sheriff's Office and myself, and we would point them in the absolute right direction. I'll tell you, Sheriff Warden down in Washington County, I gave a little spiel at the new sheriff's school about Ignite. Bob had asked me to come up, and he dang near tackled me as I walked out the door. He's like, "I want this in my jail." And I'll tell you what, man, he was on it, and he's got a good program running down there already. Sheriff Warden has done an amazing job down in Washington County, and Vern the same way. Sheriff Stanforth's got it. He's got it all set up, and they're rolling. I'm proud that we've got 3 sites now. I'd like to get a couple more going, and the program's just uber successful. I mean, it's been proven to work everywhere it's been.
How long do you think it takes from start to finish once you initiate that phone call as a sheriff with NSA until you're probably up and running? I mean, it's probably different for everyone and how you want to run your program.
It is. I will tell you, I would say you're probably talking 3 to 6 months. To get all of the pieces in place, because you got to get your community involved, and that's one of the things that also I love about Ignite is the jail is the jail in your community, and people don't realize what goes on behind those walls. Well, Ignite is out there. You're bringing in your community to come in and teach some of these classes and to be part of these inmates' lives and try to help them, and people get to see what goes on in the jail in a different perspective.
Well, let's build on that. I know we're up against a clock here, but I think it's important because I think this podcast, again, you'll be episode number 21, is growing with Ohio Sheriffs. Talk about some of the community members that do come into the jail. It seems like while I was there, you had maybe some folks that were, you can maybe use the proper titles, but even teaching like parenting skills and teaching, skills, trade type of things. I mean, who are some of the partners that you bring into your program?
So we've had some local businesses and financial institutions. And I say financial institutions, credit unions and banks come in and teach different things. We've had our local school systems be a part of it. We've had a couple of our local factories. Some unions have come in and be a part of what goes on. Because, there's an untapped workforce here. I mean, one of the statistics we use all the time is 90% of the people, 85 to 90% of the people in your county jail will be released right back into the community they live in. What are we doing to help them? What are we doing to build them up? And what are we doing to make sure that they don't return to jail? So, that community support. And again, it's factories, it's job placement people, it's financial institutions, it's the schools, it's anybody that shows an interest in your community and wanting to help. And it doesn't matter what they bring. It doesn't matter what they want to teach. It doesn't. We're going to be doing an art class pretty soon, and basically the art's going to be the painting is going to be on the walls. We're going to do my gym that we had I'm going to let an art teacher come in and take some of the inmates, and they're going to paint the wall. I don't know if you've been down to Franklin County's place, but they got some natural colors on the walls, and they got some pretty good stuff. It's whatever you can get somebody in your community or inside your facility to want to teach, to show them that they have worth. And that's what it boils down to. We're showing people they have worth, and that when they leave that they are somebody and they're not just somebody that was in jail.
Awesome, man. I think that's great. Right before we end, I'll ask you one question when we talk about BSSA, the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. Any comments on the association which funds this podcast from your perspective? And I always think it's interesting to hear people's, perspective of the association, but specifically with folks like you that come from the township, Police Department in Perkins and you come into the sheriff's office, one of the biggest things a lot of times is jails. A lot of police departments have a communications, a dispatch center or something, but you get into serving the courts, a lot of times it's different. But when we get into the association, we go through a mandatory 3 weeks of what we call new sheriff training, and then there's the different committees and affiliations within the organization. Any comments on BSSA before we end?
So I find BSSA to be incredibly helpful to not only new sheriffs, but obviously sitting sheriffs like us. You're in your 4th term. I'm in my 3rd. I'm a member of the legislative committee and the corrections committee. Lot of valuable information is passed back and forth. Obviously, our executive director is a wealth of knowledge. If you got a question, if Bob doesn't know the answer, it's because the answer doesn't exist.
That's pretty much accurate.
But I will tell you, I think our association does an amazing job. I had one of my best friends who was a police chief at a police department told me when I got elected, he said, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." I drank the Kool-Aid day one, being the sheriff and working in a sheriff's office, which I often correct a lot of people. Is an amazing thing. But the BSSA does a fantastic job of keeping us informed, keeping us in the loop, and providing a network of people to tap into if you've got questions and need things to happen.
Absolutely. Anything we left out or anything else you want to discuss before we end?
No, I would tell you, Sheriff, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I know I kind of brushed over all of the things that Ignite is, but if there's a sheriff out there or a jail administrator that listens to this, please reach out to me. I will invite you to come see what we do, much like I invited you to come to our graduation ceremony, because I'm very proud of the program and it is affecting a lot of change in my community. And the last thing I'll leave you with, when I talk about Ignite, I always tell people how we measure success. We all know that you can't save everybody, and you have to measure success in a way that is meaningful to you. And I use sports analogies a lot because I love sports, right? And I tell people, if you take a baseball hitter, a Major League Baseball hitter, and he hits the ball 3 out of 10 times safely, and he does it for 15 or 20 years, we consider him to be a Hall of Famer, right? He's one of the best ever, which means he failed 70% of the time. And if you look at it like that and you measure success in that way, it's the small successes. It's not all the failures. But I also conversely know, and I know you're a basketball guy, if I shoot 30% from the free throw line in the NBA, I'm probably not going to be in the NBA very long, or I better be Shaq.
But if you shoot 30% from the 3-point line, you're going to be really good.
Exactly. It's all about how you measure success and your perspective. So I leave people with that. And again, we've been pretty successful with the program. And I just want to let you know how much I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
I appreciate it too, Chris. I thank you for driving over here. And this is a good one. It's been a good one. I think a lot of people are going to get some good feedback. Well, Sheriff Hilton, I would like to thank you for being a part of today's episode. We would like to thank the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association for their sponsorship. For Sheriff Chris Hilton, I'm Jason Landers, and I'll be right back here next month featuring another Ohio sheriff or deputy on the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast.
Hi, my name is Bob Cornwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, located in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. It was brought to you by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. With this podcast, we are striving to introduce you to sheriffs and deputies from around the state of Ohio and recognize their great work they do every day for the citizens of Ohio. For more information about our organization, Google Buckeye State Sheriff. Thank you.